On this week's FAS TV, we focus on two farm businesses which have successfully integrated trees on their farms, but for different reasons. We visit Andrew Whiteford, Burnfoot Farm, Sanquhar, who has integrated large-scale forestry for long-term commercial gain, better livestock management, access and shelter belts. Whereas Katharine and David Lowrie at Auchgoyle Farm, Tighnabruaich are primarily focused upon returning the land to a diverse, thriving and resilient landscape, benefiting wildlife and biodiversity. We also catch up with Lyn White, Forestry and Farming Development Officer for Scottish Forestry, who gives us her thoughts on both enterprises and how trees could benefit your farming or crofting business.
My name's Andrew Whiteford. I'm part of a family business here at Burnfoot and Farm. We came here in 2013. We took all the livestock on as part of the business. We have 300 Lyn spring calving suckler cows and about 1,200 Scottish blackface ewes with a handful, about 100 Scotch mules. Everything's spring lambing, spring calving, just to make the most use of the summer grass and trying to get out the way the bad weather of the winter. What we try and do here is rotationally graze the best we can, make the most use of the grass to produce beef and lamb, and that's kind of the main drivers here. Two main enterprises and just generally looking for various diversification options, other things to expand the business. The Lyn cow, it's quite good at utilising upland ground. So here we've got 3,500 acres, but 2,000 acres of that is upland rough grazing. We do have some that does extend. We go up to about 400 metres above sea level, and then we come right down to maybe 100 metres above sea level. So we've got good grass growing land. We can make silage. So it's good to have cattle to make the most use of that, but it's good to have a cow that can also make the most use of rough grazing in the summer. The yow that we chose, it was bred on this farm initially, so we got the Scottish blackface. Again, it's making the most use of the upland rough grazing, but then when it comes down to lamb, we can still lamb her outside on our decent in by ground. The Lyn cow is quite a quiet cow, good mother, good milking, and still actually produces a good store calf. Or if you're finishing it, we sell it on to producers. It can still produce a good either a crossbred with an Angus or bred pure as well. It's still good. They kill out well. And in the sheep front, we can still potentially breed a Scotch mule if we want to, and put a fat sire over them. And also with the blackie, we can sell a mule yow lamb off them, or a gimmer if other people want to then utilise a Scotch mule to put fat lambs onto her. So it gives us a range of options with the flock and the herd, that we can either finish things ourselves or sell them as quality breeding stock. When we came here in 2013, we actually didn't really think much of the trees that were here. It was just an added aspect to the landscape until it came time to actually fell them. And we had to put a little bit of road infrastructure in ourselves to be able to fell these, but we kind of then realised that there is actually some decent value in them, and was able to add some diversity to the income that came in, and we thought maybe there's potential here. So as farmers in Scotland, we tend, it's good to look and see what grants are available, and that's when we saw there was potential to expand the existing woodland that we have. We saw there was good value in trees, and by able to expand our existing, back then there was maybe 200 acres of trees on the farm. There is a lot more if you take on all the small areas of boundaries on riverside or areas that have been taken out for various aspects. So with the trees that we planted, we wanted to add to the existing blocks of trees that we had, because there's no point putting them in all different areas and you have to then pull from that small one area, or you have to make it still commercially viable for the buyers that are potentially going to then fell them. So we looked and seen what sort of grant schemes there are to help pay or support plantation, because to be honest, doing anything from a farming point of view, the setup costs is a major obstacle to a lot of farmers, especially if they're borrowing for other different reasons. So the trees that we decided to put in here was something that would complement the existing woodland here. So it was commercial, like Sitka or Norway spruce, something that could add to the tree portfolio. When we looked at putting that in, the way we designed it, with the grant scheme that was available, it was a sheep and trees grant scheme, and that enabled for a road payment or support payment. We designed it so we could put some of that area below the existing woodland that we had to utilise maybe better soil, a bit more shelter, so the actual production is still high. And then we put another, so below the existing woodland was 15 hectares, above was 30, because we needed the area to make the most of the infrastructure to put in. We wanted to utilise the full availability of that, so we put in for 50 hectares. The road itself ended up being just over 2 kilometres, and by the time you put in lay-bys and we had to cross a waterway, the fact that we could get 1,500 metres provided was a great help in the setup cost of the new woodland. The woodland that we put in here for the sheep and trees scheme, it was about in 2018 we planted. Since then, I've seen they've done a huge amount of growth in that time. By having them up here, I can now actually see the shelter they could potentially help with. The fencing that was all put in with that has been useful. It's useful to carrying an electricity current to areas we maybe weren't able to do. The road infrastructure, we've been able to put lay-bys in for feeding livestock whenever the spring's quite harsh. I can put them up on the hill park, and there's shelter up there. Gets them off the wet in-by ground, because we actually have quite heavy clay here, and it's just useful to have areas up in the hill park so that we can access. In terms of monitoring livestock, the speed that we're able to get up to the hill, because historically our hill parks are actually quite hard to travel on, worse sometimes than actually what it's like out on the plateaus on the hills. And with farming, a lot of time, like time pressure is always there, like time's money. If you can get around your livestock and potentially see problems a lot quicker or gather a lot quicker, you can get on top of the workload so much quicker, and just makes things a bit more pleasant. Just opens the door a lot more to access our hill ground, and there's loads of options in the future as well to look at. So the benefits for us integrating trees here in our farming business, the main one and the main driver initially was infrastructure. Our farm was quite hard to access up on the hill. By having a road network, we can save our time going and checking livestock. We've got infrastructure to get cattle out in the spring for feeding, for a healthy post-calving environment. It allowed us to have a fencing network to carry electric current up onto hill fencing, which again helps us manage livestock and graze around the farm a lot better. The next main driver was the income. The crop we put in was a commercial crop. It's Sitka and Norway spruce. That was a main driver. It's the future income that the farm might need, and it forces us to lock away a potential amount of investment so that we don't spend it earlier than we need to. It might be needed in the future, and helps potentially protect the farm from market upsets and things like that. The design of the area that we chose, it's split into a 15 hectare block lower down. We designed it that way. We didn't want to take too much away from the actual farming hill park, so we kept it one side, and it's made mainly Norway spruce with broadleafs and a little bit of open area. I think that linked in better with the existing trees that were down in the lower part, and environmentally for the wildlife, and it's quite wet in those areas as well. Above is about 30 hectares. Again, that needed to be on the hill because we just needed the area of land. It's got more productive trees, so the Sitka is fast growing, which also is present in sort of the lower block of 15 hectare, but in the top half of the lower block. So it's kind of going from like high, fast growing, and then as you come down, more Norway spruce and broadleafs. And its design was also to be in mind with when we're felling as well. It needs to be useful for that operation. With the forestry grant, the sheep and trees, a lot of it was for the upfront cost of the roads. There's also annual payment for maintenance, because it's not just money for nothing. Like, you have to have good establishment, and there's still a lot of spraying so on our land. If it is in sort of semi-productive area, there's a lot of grass growing, so you have to spray for that. If there's trees that don't establish, you might have to plant more of that. So there's a lot to it. We had a forestry consultant, helped with all of that and helped with the design, and we can use the funding in the right areas to try and get the best outcome for the whole plantation, because there is ongoing costs that need to be looked at, and even just dealing with the contractors to come and do that work. It's useful to have someone that knows the industry and knows the people that are available to do that, and also to do a good job. So that's a very important utilisation of the grant. And any concerns that farmers have about the use of agricultural land for forestry is look at your farm. You know, most farms, it's not every part of your farm is productive. You'll know there's areas that aren't working well. So I think you can get the benefits of both worlds. I'm not an advocate of taking away your best silage ground for that, but you will have areas. Maybe your lambing percentages aren't so good on that. Maybe there's predation, maybe it's just poor access, so you never actually check it. And if there is schemes like this, like I've utilised the infrastructure payments to get it to a bit of woodland that was very hard to access, even just to check livestock. If it's used in the right areas of your farm, it can add to it. But number one thing is, you can't say it's bad unless you know how your land's performing. When we came here, we soil tested all our ground. We tried to improve certain areas. Some areas just didn't respond. We grazed animals on different areas. Some did well, some not so good. So then you look at where, if I was going to use trees, where could I make the most of it? So I believe there's always, you're very, very lucky if every part of your farm is very productive. Then yeah, I wouldn't say plant trees, but if it's not, it can add to it as well. In general, I believe the process went quite well. There was hurdles, but I feel we noticed them early and we kind of dealt with it. A major ongoing problem is deer. So maybe we should maybe spent more on just upgrading and use deer fencing. That would maybe saved on a lot of issues with having to keep on top of them, and the trees might have actually grown a bit quicker if there wasn't the nibbling through the winter and things like that. I mean, I might, if I'd known this, I might have actually went and did this sooner and had the infrastructure up on my farm sooner. But you can only work with the time scale that you had. In general, we maybe didn't anticipate how much water might actually still fall in the area, so we've maybe had to upgrade certain drains or culverts when there's been quite a lot of heavy rain. But I suppose you don't know that for sure until the rain comes. So those may be the two main things: deer fencing and just making sure that the drainage system is able to carry the amount of water that is going to be collected for a new plantation or new road infrastructure. Number one bit of advice is monitor your farm first. Look at your stocking numbers, look at which part of the farm is contributing the best to your production, what areas aren't, and look at, is there areas that you can't access very well, areas that you think you could do without or are causing more hassle to the business than what they're worth. Once you do that, you can make an informed decision whether going into trees is worth it or not. So secondly, I would say, is there infrastructure you need on your farm? Could you make the most of a grant scheme? Is there fences that maybe need updated? Is there areas of the farm you want to access? And trees could be a way to justify this. Is there a reason you want to invest or lock away capital in the future? Is there anything in the future, 35 years time, that would be useful to do that? Thirdly, I would say look at the grant schemes, see which ones might suit you. There's no point get a consultant in, filling all the forms and being like, actually there might have been one that was a bit better suited. Is it more, are you wanting more commercial? Do you want to have that income in the future, or are you happy to do some of the other schemes, plant broadleafs maybe for biodiversity purposes or carbon capture, selling carbon credits? So try and target the grant scheme with what the future objectives you have on your farm. But you can only do that if you can pinpoint what your objectives want to be. So firstly, I would always look at your own business first, your performance, what the objectives are, what you're wanting to see in the future, and target the payments and the schemes. That's what they're there for. They're there to help farmers. They're there to encourage you to make that leap into something different. So I would say those three steps would be the top ones for me.
I'm Lyn White, Forestry and Farm and Development Officer for Scottish Forestry. From my viewpoint, Andrew's work made the grant work for him. Exactly what he was looking for, the grant could supply. Most people think about the forestry grant scheme as just being able to plant trees, but the sheep and trees one is unique in itself, that we can supply infrastructure alongside that grant. So Andrew's done the 50 hectares and then we get 1,500 metres of road. And it's commercial trees, it's conifers and things like that. There is a bit of native in there as well that he did very well to design into another close compartment and help the biodiversity on the farm. But it's a case of he's really made it work. He wanted to be able to take trees out, but alongside that he's got a number of benefits. He's obviously got the road. He can access the stock a lot easier, he can feed the stock a lot easier, which means he can leave them out longer, which is great for him when you're running the kind of numbers that he's running. If you're running 300 cows, you really want to be able to manage them that bit better. You're running 1,200 ewes as well. The management takes up a bit of time, and you've got better access to them, better management, better movement of stock, even bringing stock in to do any jobs, or if you're bringing cattle in, then you can bring them in smaller lots. Keeps everybody's stress levels down, the livestock and there. So again, great for management for that point of view. The grant funding, if you want to look at it, it can be done in one or two different ways. You could look at speaking to your local office. We've got local offices all over Scotland. If you want to speak to them and just say, right, I'm thinking about planting some trees in this area, like you could send them a map. Send them a map and they'll be able to have a look at it and say, well, this could be suitable here or that. When you've got a proposal kind of thing or any ideas, just speak to them. They'd be probably quite happy to come out and have a visit and just have a walk around with you and discuss your objectives and that. I think the important thing here is your objectives, is know what you want to actually do, whether it be a commercial there, it be a shelter belt. It can be a multitude of things kind of thing. As I say, Andrew's got a multitude of things from planting that one woodland. The other thing you could do is look at the Farm Advisory Service special options. There's one in there for woodland creation and woodland management and that kind of thing. So it's really easy to apply for. It takes 2 or 3 minutes to apply for. You get £1,600 worth of forestry consultants' time to come out and have a look. And again, important there, it's what your objectives are for that shelter belt, riparian planting, commercial timber or anything like that. It's what your objective is, and hopefully the grant scheme will provide an option and an opportunity for you to take that forward. From my perspective, talking about the Integrated Tree Network, would to come to one of our events kind of thing and actually speak to people that have actually done it, whether it be an on-farm event or it happens to be one of our webinars, is actually speak to a farmer that's actually done it. If there was any advice I would like to give farmers, landowners, crofters, anybody who's thinking about planting trees, is how are they going to integrate in your business? How are they going to benefit your business? They have to benefit your business. You've got a lot going on and everything like that, so they have to benefit your business. And it could be a small area to start with. We've got one farm that put in 0.4 a hectare as a shelter belt, and that's making a big difference to their business. If you're looking for further information or anything like that, obviously, I would say. Look at the Integrated Tree Network. You can look at the Scottish Forestry website, or you can look at the Rural Payments and Services, because that has all the grants actually on it, and the amount of money and the guidance and everything like that there. But again, probably the Scottish Forestry one, get on there and find out where your local office is, or drop me an email.
My grandfather was a farmer. I kind of worked on farms when I was younger. There were mixed farms, whether it was bringing potatoes on the harvesting machine or being set out on a field of corn and having to get all the wild oats out of it, or working with the cattle and whatever else. So I did that when I was younger. And then I've also always had horses, so I was used to big, livestock and bigger animals around the place. So it's always appealed, I think, to both of us to have livestock, and also, as well as for farming, as well as for producing your own meat, which is great, there's also huge benefits, of course, to having these big animals on a farm, because they're basically replacing the wild aurochs, the wild cattle, the wild horses that we would have had. So with these animals, you also get masses of wildlife, and they're good for the soil, they're good for all those little invertebrates like the dung beetle, they're good for birds, good for invertebrates. I mean, you can just we watch birds like the pied wagtail sit on the back of the cattle or the horses' backs and pluck off insects. The swallows follow them as they move through the pasture. So there's just so many benefits of having livestock as well as for farming. Like if you manage them in a system, in a kind of rotational system, you can really benefit every aspect of the land. So at the moment we've got just cattle, and we've also got the horses, which actually we use. They're definitely our conservation tools as well. We also have pigs occasionally, but they just come every now and then, so we'll be due to have some at some point.
They do a great job of ground preparation, but you can't miss a beat with them. So unlike the bigger animals, which they'll respect the fencing to an extent, they can learn about electric fencing. The pigs, we've found them where we were doing the agroforestry, where we were doing some tree planting, and we were preparing some arable land between those trees. It was kind of high stakes, because you've got new trees near your very devious pigs, and they will test the fence every day. So there's no calm time for them. They sleep. Once they're up, they're busy. And so we use them, we have used them, we will use them again, but we're not going to keep them on the farm stressing us out all the time. So we've introduced trees onto this landscape, but we're just returning something that has evolved here forever. So in a sense, what we're trying to do here is move the dial from pure livestock to a mix of wildlife, livestock, healthy ecosystem. As part of that, we have got a bunch of different ways of trying to reintroduce trees. Neither is it as easy as you think it should be, nor is it as hard. So once you have excluded the deer, that's the key thing, then we have a bunch of different formats here. So we've got trees in hedgerows, we've got big trees that we've inherited here, we've got new plantations, we've got tree islands, all those different ways of bringing them in, but it's the same thing. It adds structure, it adds different diversity to the farm. Purely from a livestock point of view, you wonder whether in the future they're going to be super necessary for extreme weather events, whether it be winter, springtime with heavy wind and rain, or indeed the summertime. So now we're looking at a square field with post and wire around the outside. There's not a huge amount of shelter for livestock in the summer. There's not a huge amount of shelter for pasture in the summer as well. So some of the areas that survived that drought period better were the ones that had a little bit of shade. So I think it's just about making us more resilient for the future.
Exactly, I was going to say the same thing, climate resilient. We've also got orchards in the mix, so basically trying to incorporate trees throughout the landscape. We are in the temperate rainforest zone, and we're lucky enough to have a thread of rainforest alongside the burn. So trees, as David has said, so for shelter, but also the livestock browse upon them, really important for nutrients as well. So we've got lovely footage.
Not the new ones, obviously.
Lovely footage of the cattle eating willow in kind of this, we call it the wilderness zone, where there's a lot of scrub and old willow trees, and they love it. You know, they use it sensually, they can scrub on them, you know, they're always wanting to itch, so they're using them psychologically for behavioural aspects. There's so many different aspects of a tree that is brilliant to your animals, just makes them feel better. And whenever, you know, I run a lot, so I'm running all over the landscape, whenever you see a tree, the sheep or the cattle will be underneath it, the horses will be underneath it, shelter from flies. It just makes so much sense. And as Dave was saying, we were speaking to farmers down south who suffered so much more than we did up in Scotland, and they were just saying, you know, the only green thing on our farms were the hedgerows and those areas of trees. They're going to be massively important with these climate events we're going to have in the future. So behind is part of that, of the rainforest that we inherited. So we've got a burn, we've got lovely sessile oaks in there, we've got hazels, which are really stunning, really important for lichens, bryophytes, for the epiphytic plants that grow on the trees, which are internationally important in Scotland. So it's really important that we look after those. So from our point of view, as David said, the first thing we did was to put up a fence, a deer fence, all the way around the farm. So 3 kilometre deer fence we both did. It was hard work, but so vital. So that has allowed natural succession in those woodlands. So we're giving it a breather, that woodland, because it would have been browsed by deer, so roe deer. Some red also used to come up. We have herds that used to come from the top ground, but also sheep would have gone in there, and they nip off all the wildflowers and the new seedlings as well. So we're giving it a bit of a breather, and then in time, I guess the vision for the future for this farm would be that we would allow the livestock to roam about more. At the moment we use electric fence to move them around the farm, so everything gets a break. So the pastures get a break, everything does, and we're finding that's working. But in the future,
we couldn't integrate them into a new plantation.
Yes.
Obviously, you know, the trees are too small. They look too much like food. They would be nipped off, and so that fully integrated vision has to wait, and we have to handhold through this kind of intensive care period. That will come though, and that's when I think it will be really exciting, when we get the full benefits of integrating livestock and woodland resources rather than treating them as separate things. And that's what we're really trying to get away from here.
Yeah. And as we have a farm stay business, so we've got people come and stay in the farmhouse and they stay in the eco lodge, and we also do retreats. People run and do yoga and wildlife, that kind of thing. And I think the eventual idea is that we'll fence the people in and the animals can do their thing. That's the vision. So the first thing we did was to go and map what habitats we had existing on the farm. So we've got a couple of species rich kind of flushes, wet areas, which have got really lovely wild flowers in them. So we didn't want to plant the trees there because they don't benefit from woodland. They would basically be shaded out, and all the leaves kind of increase the nutrients in those areas, and that would be detrimental to the wildflowers. So we mapped where the wildflowers were. We thought about where we had the most soft rush. We do very well growing soft rush,
which actually is an indication of wet ground. So if you pick your gullies and your wet areas where are pretty low productivity anyway from a farming perspective, and turn those into forestry assets with edges which you can use for fencing around of, that was a consideration. And also, I mean, honestly, this wasn't the biggest consideration, but sometimes if you have a good fence, use that. You know, not all the fences are great on this farm, and some of the better internal ones we would use as the edge of a woodland parcel, in order that you're not putting in 4 new fences for a new woodland during this period where we must separate the livestock from the pasture.
Yeah. Biodiversity is thinking about what is native to your local area, thinking about what works. So when we were looking at the woodlands, for example, what we were going to plant, we're mirroring what's around us, what's in these rainforests around us. We wanted to emulate those species, and also where we couldn't do natural succession, which we love, where we've got woodlands, trees want to grow anywhere, and they're growing now, as we said, with the deer fence. So alders, willows, oaks are popping up everywhere. So where we couldn't do that, then we would use native local seed sources. So we made sure that they were the right provenance. So biodiversity is about just as the richness of wildlife, the richness of different species, and abundance of different species. And as everything's been growing up, we did a bird survey, common bird surveys. I've been doing those each year, and the bird species are increasing, the numbers is increasing. We're getting many more sedge warblers, for example. They love this kind of habitat. Grasshopper warblers have increased. We've got snipe have come in. We've also put ponds in, so they're really enjoying that wet ground, which seems a bit crazy that we need to create more wet ground. We are the wettest, boggiest farm in the world, but just occasionally for a couple of weeks it can dry up. So those extra wetted areas are really important for snipe. So we're getting, I guess, a mosaic is what we're always looking for. So it's a kind of mix of different habitats, from scrub to woodland to openings, where the cattle and the horses in the future are going to love being in these designed open grounds, as they're called, within these woodlands. They're going to get huge benefit from grazing in there, and wildlife as well. So it's a real mix of different species. It's lovely to see them increase, and also plants, wild plants. So we're seeing things like sneezewort is increasing, and we've been working on a hay meadow, and we've got loads of yellow rattle orchids in it for the first year. So things are coming back. So that's really great to see.
We've worked with the funding agencies. It's with the best will in the world, these things can be quite expensive, particularly at the start, where you're trying to separate what you're doing with livestock from what you're doing with woodland. Fencing is expensive. We do all of the fencing, so that saves a bit, but yeah, there is a cash element. So we've worked with a lot of different organisations to achieve that. The forestry grant scheme was the big provider, if you like, that put in the meta structure, the big external fence, the tree stocks for the big planting zones that we've done. So that creates the kind of, in the future, these will be the big woodland resources. The interconnectivity between those resources, because still, if you have a field full of trees here and you have an existing woodland there, you need to create the corridor between the two. The Woodland Trust have helped us with those plantings and some of the fencing around that. So we've had volunteers here practically helping putting trees in the ground. So, you know, it's the product of a lot of different organisations. We've had, we're in part of a rewilding group called Northwoods Rewilding, and they've assisted with a couple of the specific wildlife interventions, which could also be used as water resources to draw from for pastured cattle. So it is a culmination of effort here.
We also get a small amount of payment through the EEC scheme for a habitat mosaic, which made sense to us because it's something we want to do anyway, and it helps towards the cattle, because they're rare breeds, which makes them quite expensive because we need to get a bull in from miles away, and also we're organic. So actually, yes, organic. We've had some funding through the EEC scheme through organic conversion, which has been great. And so the mosaic, it's to ensure that the cattle go in for a set amount of time twice a year to ensure that so it's a lovely habitat of existing woodland and scrub and species rich, so wildflower rich marshland. So they need to be in there, opening it up, assuring that we still have the wildflowers, going through the scrub, nibbling on bits of it, so you get all these lovely edges where your dragonflies and butterflies and different birds can nest, so you get a really nice effect. So we've had some funding towards that, and in concert with that, we've also created a hectare of wild bird seed mix. So we've got a little arable option on the farm, which is interesting. We weren't sure about doing it. It's been very expensive. Dave can tell you how we did it, but from a wildlife point of view, it's actually been amazing. We got the first lapwing when Dave was ploughing it last year, and the flowers have been supporting loads of different bumblebees, white-tailed bumblebees and common carded bumblebee, and also loads of birds as well so it has really worked. And it's in this landscape where there's no arable, hardly any arable for mile on end. It's quite important in the wintertime when there's very few little seeds for birds.
I think the funding side of that, it's interesting. So it doesn't necessarily wipe its own face, in terms of financially. It's an interesting one because these schemes I'm sure farmers would like more from them, and certainly to cover the costs. We would too. If they're over subsidised, you get people doing them perhaps without their heart in it. And with some of these things, you're creating quite a big change on your farm. And I think it's important that is part of a plan, not just chucking it in because the payment's good that year. So with the wild bird seed area, we were keen to do that. That's why we've done the silver arable parts under the FGS scheme as well anyway, because it helps us maximise diversity here. Where we are, we're obviously a small farm. We haven't got the big kit, so we have to bring contractors in for ground preparation. So that is a big cost. So added on top of which the seed cost, so that might be $360 per hectare, given that we've got big travel time in a rural area, which would be the same as a lot of your viewers. And then the seed costs have gone up since any of these schemes were devised. So that might not actually cover itself, but it's certainly a help towards something we were wanting to do anyway. So is it worth doing? Spreadsheet point of view, probably not. Farm scale, wildlife recovery, rush control, ground disturbance, water resource point of view, all of those things you might say, actually, yeah, it was worth doing. So it's a bit more complicated, I would say.
I was really keen that all the woodland would have been natural regeneration.
We've had to wait 3 years to get this feeling of difference, and that can be quite a difficult 3-year gap where you put the effort in and you're just not seeing the results. And now it's really encouraging to see things putting their heads up and really having a go now. So I would have just front loaded it. We couldn't, financially we couldn't, practically we were working as hard as we could. But if in another parallel universe I had twice as much workforce and everything else, I would have done everything on day one.
Yeah, it was very satisfying. We've planted over 25,000 trees now, and we've planted just about all of them by hand ourselves, and that is something lovely. There's people love planting trees, and I love planting them. It's amazing what you find when you're digging up, and to see those grow is a wonderful thing, each year getting bigger. And I mean, they may not have, ecologists would argue that, it's not a woodland you're creating, you're really creating a plantation, but you can help it. In the future, we're going to veterinise them quite soon. There's all kinds of things you can do wildlife-wise if you're not wanting. Well, I mean, you can obviously also you could think about, in 20 years' time, coppicing some for firewood or whatever. But also that's providing different growth. There's lots of things you can do to intervene to make them more wildlife and fast track them towards woodlands in the future.
I would integrate trees on your farm how you can. So do it in a way that suits you. It doesn't have to be losing your best field if you regard it like that. Do it like you can. So we've got a bunch of different methods that I hope you'll see as you come around the farm, and they work with what we were doing anyway. So we have tree islands, really useful farming assets, but also they'll provide all of those benefits for livestock. So if you're pure farming, I still think there's a bunch of interventions which are helpful. Hedgerows, we've got to get hedgerows back in for livestock. I mean, they're free fences in the long run, if you look at it that way. There's a lot of work that goes into putting them in, but if we'd got the hedges in earlier, I would have saved loads of time doing electric fencing around little paddocks for animals. So I would there's a ton of different formats. I'm finding from the animal perspective that they're useful assets on the farm.
Yeah, massive assets. And I would just add, so there are a lot of support mechanisms. There's obviously Scottish Forestry. There's also with various grants and various options. And there's also the Woodland Trust that does so more hedgerows and more woodlands for smaller schemes. So there's lots of mechanisms that farmers can draw on to help them with that. And obviously, what Lyn White's doing with the integrated tree network is really useful as well. There's plenty you can draw from all those case studies and from learning days to see what other farmers are doing. I think the actual planting, so we've done something, so we've just planted straight into the ground. We've not done invert mounding. From an ecological point of view, I think it's better to plant into the ground, but it does mean that your trees have more of a fight to get going, I would say. But because of that, they're probably going to be more resilient in the future, potentially. We have got a couple of banks where we were sorting out a track, and so we had to create banks either side, and those trees have definitely come on quicker. So for us in a rainforest area, a lot of people do invert mound, but I would say it can happen. It's just going to perhaps be a bit slower at the start if you plant straight into the ground, but they will take off eventually. And it depends, I suppose, what your ultimate aim is. For us, it's wildlife and the livestock benefit. So we're not worried if our trees are kind of all over the shop, because actually that's better wildlife-wise anyway. But if you're wanting to produce timber, then that's obviously something different as well. So it's just to think about what your main goals are in the future.
On this farm, they want to bring the habitats together, bring the wildlife back and everything like that. And they started off with quite a patchwork, but having the trees has made a big difference to that, bringing things together. Again, they mentioned the fence, the 3 kilometres of fence that was actually done as part of their forestry grant scheme. So that's made a big difference. It's protected the whole of the 80 acres that they have here. They've been able to plant the trees exactly where they wanted to plant the trees. They know they're protected. They're not going to get bothered by deer or anything like that. Especially, again, Katharine mentioned the natural regen. It's great to actually see just trees popping up here, there and everywhere kind of thing, and creating that connectivity that they want to increase the biodiversity, let wildlife flow through the farm kind of thing. And again, it's absolutely brilliant from my point of view, because when we talk to farmers and everything like that, we discuss what their objective is, actually planting trees, and there is for better biodiversity on the farm, building habitat and everything like that. And planting over 25,000 trees on the farm will give them that kind of thing. It's giving them the connectivity, exactly what they want. Again, not just planting, but they're getting natural regen as well. And again, with the cattle here, it's making a brilliant habitat for them. They can naturally browse the trees, they've got shelter, they've got shade and everything like that. They've got places to hide and that kind of thing when the weather's inclement and that kind of thing. I think it's really good what they've done. Not for everybody, obviously, but everybody, we're going towards that biodiversity element on a farm and everything like that. So interesting, Dave, but I was nearly shouting and screaming when Dave said that people should be thinking about integrating trees on their farm. And for their perspective, they're doing it on a big scale. They've integrated them, taking over a third of the farm. But people can do it in different ways, kind of thing. It doesn't need to be that percentage. It can be a shelter belt. It can be a bit of riparian planting, and then giving that connectivity to the farm and letting biodiversity thrive.
If you are interested in integrating trees on your farm or croft, specialist advice is available through Scotland's Farm Advisory Service, or contact Lyn White at Scottish Forestry for more information.